Hello, I'm Freya and I'm 27 years old. I have a very complicated relationship with my mother. You'd think that having only one parent would make you have a closer relationship with them, but that really wasn't the case with me. My dad and I were super close growing up. He was my role model and the person I looked up to the most. I was also not really interested in anything that my mom tried to get me into. I was not the daughter she had always wanted, and that created this resentment in her against me. I was around 12 when my dad passed away in a horrific car crash. I was devastated and I refused to come out of my room for weeks. My mom eventually got tired of me moping around and began to take her frustrations out on me. There was not a day that went by when she didn't yell at me for being too lazy. Even when I tried to talk to her about how much I missed Dad, she would simply tell me to get over it. I resorted to just not telling her about anything that I felt or anything that was going on in my life. That only made her angrier. She got even more controlling. She needed to know everything that I did from the time I woke up till I went to sleep. If she suspected I was hiding something, she would ground me. It was truly a nightmare to live with her. Alongside that, she also loved to poke fun at me for my appearance. As a teenager, that was devastating. She would call me fat and ugly at any point that I upset her and would never apologize for it. In fact, she took great pleasure in seeing me look so hurt. If I did even the slightest thing to upset her, though, suddenly she was the victim of a heinous crime. She was very dramatic. When I turned 16, my life only got more hellish. My mom gave me a month to get a job because she wanted me to pay rent. "You need to find a job. I'm done providing for you." "But I'm your daughter." "And you're an ungrateful one. You have 1 month. After that, I expect you to pay rent." "I'm not even an adult. How can you make me pay rent?" "You're an adult enough to keep talking back to me right now, aren't you?" "You can't be serious, Mom." "You need to cut me some slack, Freya. I've been working non-stop for the last 16 years. I want a break, too. You're old enough to start paying rent." "How much do you expect me to pay?" "Market price, of course." "So let me get this right. You want me to pay rent at market price and feed myself while juggling school at the same time?" "Yes." "Do we each live days that have different hours? Where will I even get the time for all of that? Do you expect me to never sleep?" "I don't care about the technicalities. If you want to continue living here, you have to follow my rules." I couldn't believe that my own mother was treating me like I was some tenant looking for a place to live. I knew that there was no way for me to even get close to accomplishing her conditions without absolutely burning myself out. But at that moment, I was so panicked and scared that my brain refused to work. For the next month, I managed to find a job and somehow, by some miracle, managed to juggle working and school. I was catching a maximum of 3 hours of sleep and I was barely eating anything because my body was so exhausted that all I ever felt was nausea. Obviously, I lost a lot of weight, but my mom didn't seem to care. When it came time to pay the rent, she knocked on my door and rudely asked me for the money. I handed her almost the entirety of my paycheck and watched her glow with joy as she held all the money. She then looked at me with this evil look on her face and told me that she gave me extra time this month to pay off the rent because I hadn't started working until the second week of the month, but she expected me to pay her the rent by the first week of the next month. I wanted to cry and sleep. My mother turned into every cliched evil stepmother, except this time she was my actual biological mother. I remember thinking at that time that I wished I had someone to help me out of the miserable life I was living. The next day, I was talking about it with a friend when she asked me if I had any family members living nearby. That's when it struck me. I did have one family member, and that was my mom's sister, Bess. Aunt Bess lived in the town with her family. She and I always had a very close bond, although because my mom and her had a fight about something, I stopped being able to see her. I did feel kind of bad that I was only reaching out when I needed help, but I knew that she would have been even more upset if I had not reached out at all. So one day I told my mom that I was going on a road trip with my friends and left to go see Aunt Bess. When I got to her house, she was very surprised to see me. It had been about 1.5 years since we met each other. She hugged me really tight and with tears in her eyes asked me what I was doing there. I told her I needed her help with something. She cut me off and told me to explain myself once I was sitting inside. Once we were both comfy, she asked me again why I had come over. So tell me, darling, why have you come over so suddenly? Does your mom know about you coming here? Oh, no. Don't tell Mom about me being here. I told her I was going on a road trip with some friends, and they were covering for me in case she called. Okay, that's great, but did something happen? I'm guessing it must be bad considering you're lying to your mom to meet me here. Yeah, well, Mom's been going on some crazy tangent about retiring early. But does she have any savings to fall back on? I mean, she also has to take care of you. Well, she solved that problem by having me pay her rent to live with her. What? What do you mean? She thinks since I'm old enough to work, I can start paying rent. But what about school? You won't have any time for yourself or anything else if you work enough to pay rent. That's what I said. I would have been sort of okay with it if she gave me a small price to pay, but she expects me to pay her rent at the current market price. What the hell is wrong with that woman? How in the world is she charging her own daughter to live in the house that she grew up in? I don't know, but I managed to do it somehow this month, and I know I look like I haven't slept in ages. Everything hurts, and I want nothing more than to just relax for a day. You already started working? She gave me a month to find a job and pay her the rent when she gave me the ultimatum. I just paid my first rent, but seeing how happy she looked and the way she demanded me to pay her within the first week of next month, I knew I couldn't keep doing this anymore. My goodness, you poor child. What are you going to do about it? I was kind of hoping that you'd be able to help me out just until I turn 18, if you want. I'll even take care of my expenses and maybe I could pay you rent, but at a discount. Nonsense, Freya. You're family. Moreover, you're a child. How could I possibly ask you to pay for anything when I am more than capable of providing for you? Of course I'll help you out, but I need you to do it on one condition. Yes, I'll do absolutely anything. You cannot tell your mother that you're staying with me or that I'm helping you out. Of course, I never planned to anyway. That's it then. You're staying with us. You can begin moving in as soon as you like. Thank you so much. You're a lifesaver, Aunt Bess. I spent the rest of the day with Aunt Bess because she really did make me feel better. When she agreed to let me stay with her, I felt like this huge weight had been lifted off of me. All the anxiety I had about Mom's condition vanished. I spent the night with Aunt Bess and her family. It felt good to be with other family members. When I said that my mom had a fight with Aunt Bess and it destroyed their relationship, I meant it. When my dad passed away, my mom had been a stay-at-home mom, so she didn't really have any means of living for a couple of months until she found her a job. To add to it, she also had to finish her degree, which she left when she got pregnant with me. My aunt felt bad for her and told her that she would help her out until she got a job. At that time, my aunt lived on her own and made more than enough money. My mom was grateful for my aunt's help, but she ended up lying to my aunt for a long while. She did not tell my aunt when she graduated or when she got a job. Instead, she kept taking money from her. The thing is, if she had just asked my aunt for extra money, my aunt would have readily given it to her. So when my aunt found out about my mom's technical stealing, they got into this huge fight. I remember that fight like it was only yesterday. My aunt had calmly confronted my mom about what she had been doing, and my mom got super defensive about it. Of course, my mom escalated the fight and it became a screaming match. My aunt ended up leaving after saying that she would no longer support my mom in any way. My aunt continued to buy me things and would often ask me what I wanted, and she would send them over to me. My mom didn't mind because she knew that at the end of the day, her sister was still carrying a good portion of the cost that she would have had to carry. It wasn't until my aunt got married that my mom began to have a problem with her. My aunt married a rich and handsome man, whom my mom was immediately jealous of. She was already jealous of the luxurious lifestyle her sister had, but to see it get even better threw my mom off the edge. From then on, she went down a spiral of hating my aunt. She began to talk badly about her sister to all their family and friends. Once again, there was a lot of fighting, and it ended with my aunt cutting off contact with us. As I spent time with my aunt, she told me about how guilty she felt for not making contact with me because I didn't do anything wrong. But she had to because my mother was getting too toxic. I knew that she did what she had to do to protect herself and her family because that's exactly what I was doing at that moment. I told her she had nothing to apologize for, and we carried on with the rest of the night. Over the next week, I began to move my things out of the house. When my mom figured out what I was doing, she flew into a fit of rage. "What do you think you're doing?" "Moving out." "And with whose permission are you doing that?" "I didn't think I needed permission to move out." "Why did you think that? You live under my roof, so you need my permission for everything." "That's exactly why I'm moving out. I don't want to live by your rules anymore." "Are you talking back to me?" "No, but you did say that if I wanted to live here, I needed to pay rent. I don't want to pay rent, nor do I want to live here. So I'm just going to move out." "Who's even helping you?" "Just one of my friends." "Which one?" "I don't think that's any of your business, Mom." "So, you're nothing but a leech. They'll realize it pretty soon enough, and then you'll come crying back to me. Wait and watch. If you do come back, I'm not letting you in." Her words hurt, but I did my best to not think about them. Once I was pretty settled into my aunt's place, she helped me enroll in a high school in their town. I was pretty sad to be leaving my friends, but I knew that moving away from my toxic mother was what was best for me. From then on, I began to notice a significant change in my overall mood and well-being. I was, first of all, very well rested and healthy. I was happier and more interested in a lot of things. I no longer rushed to go to work or even just waited around at school so I could delay coming back home. In fact, I almost always rushed home after school. My aunt was a calm and reassuring presence for me. Since she only had one son and always wanted a girl, she took care of me like I was her own daughter. I even managed to get another, more relaxed job. My aunt took all my earnings and put them in a savings account for college. When it came time to apply for college, I chose to go to the college in my aunt's town. I got in with a good scholarship, which reduced a lot of my payments. My aunt helped, of course, but it still felt good to have contributed somehow to my own education. Since I was in college and I could afford it, around the second year I decided to move out of my aunt's place. She was more than supportive of my decision and kept dropping by my place every once a week. This tradition hasn't died down to date, by the way. After I graduated, I managed to get a job at a good firm that also paid me good money. I was living really well and everything was going amazing. In all this time, I hadn't heard a word from my mother. It was at least understandable why I hadn't contacted her, but she never even tried to call me or even email me to ask how I was doing. Around this time was when I got engaged to my boyfriend, who I met in my third year of college. As a courtesy, I decided to get back in touch with my mom and invite her to the wedding. I knew she read the invite because she called me. That was the first time she called me in 7 years. "So, you're getting married?" "Yes. Hi, Mom." "How come I haven't heard about you being in a relationship?" "Well, you never called for the past 7 years, so—" "And it was my duty to call you? You couldn't have called me?" "I don't see why I had to make the first move when you were the one who forced me to move out." "I didn't do that." "You literally made me pay rent to live in the same house you raised me in. How could I not want to move out?" "Did you even care about your poor aging mother?" "Of course I did. But you never cared for your almost homeless child. Not once did you even check in on me. Do you even know where I live?" "Do you know about how I have been living these past few years?" "Look, I don't want to get into an argument right now. The invitation to my wedding is still open for you. Just let me know if you're going to be there or not so I can plan accordingly." "I'll definitely be there." A part of me was happy that my mother would be attending the most important day of my life, but the other part of me felt like there was something off. I knew that my mother would never give up the opportunity to fight. It was clear as day how she was trying to steer our first conversation in years into a fight. Even though I felt like something was wrong, I ignored it and continued to plan my wedding. When the big day arrived, I saw my mother for the first time in years, and I will say that she did look like she aged a lot more than when I last saw her. My aunt was older than her, but somehow she looked younger in comparison to my mom. I greeted my mom with a hug, and she reciprocated it with so much happiness that I completely forgot about the bad feeling I had about her attending the wedding. The rest of the wedding ceremony and the reception went off well until it was time for toasts. After everyone gave their heartfelt speeches of love towards my husband and me, my mom took the mic and began to tell everybody that I had run away from home. She told them that I had stolen money from her and sought refuge in some place for the past 7 years. She then broke down crying and started asking me how I could do this to my own mother. I was in shock. That was not what I expected her to do. The feeling I had was right. Thankfully, most of the guests there knew of my story. The few that didn't, mostly my other relatives, looked confused and shocked. My husband had hired security for this very reason as a precaution in case my mother pulled something at the wedding. She was escorted out by security, but not without throwing a tantrum. She kicked and screamed while being escorted. She kept calling me a thief and a liar. After that, I decided that I never wanted to see my mother ever again. She had done more than enough. I had to send formal apologies along with explanations to every guest, even the ones who knew about the backstory, because it felt like it was the right thing to do. On top of all that, my mother ruined the most important day of my life just to get an ounce of attention. My aunt stood by me the entire time. After my mom was escorted out, my aunt went to have a stern word with her, and from what she told me, my mom yelled at her too, but eventually decided to not contact me for a while. I was grateful that my aunt took charge of that, because if I had to tell my mom that, I probably would have gone berserk. 3 years went by before I saw my mother again. This time, She was the one who made contact first. I don't know how she managed to get my address, so I was very surprised to see her at my door. Seeing her there only made me angrier. In the past 3 years, I had started going to therapy to unpack all my emotions, and that's when I realized just how much of an impact my mother had on me growing up. Somehow, she looked even older when I saw her. She looked thinner and rather sickly. She gave me a once-over and smirked. "Putting on marriage weight, I see. If that's what you've come here for, please leave." "Ugh, you could just never take a joke, could you?" "Excuse me? But when have you ever joked with me?" "I can't remember every single joke I've ever made. I just remember you getting butthurt about them." "Okay, I'm going to shut the door in your face right now." No, please don't. I actually came here because I need your help." "My help? What happened?" "Well, I ended up retiring like I planned, but turned out I didn't have enough money to actually cover my retirement. The house's mortgage was still not paid off, and it ended up foreclosing. I have no place to go, and I was wondering if you would maybe let me stay with you for a while." Okay, that's it? I can move in?" "Oh, yeah, of course. You just need to pay me rent, at market price, of course." "Rent? I'm your mother. How dare you ask me to pay you rent? After all I gave you." "Did it matter that I was your daughter when you asked me to pay rent?" But I don't have the means to pay rent." "Well, you could always find a job. After all, you're old enough to pay rent." "You are unbelievable." "This is my house, so it's my rules. You either pay rent or leave it. It's as simple as that." "Never mind. I thought you'd at least be a little sympathetic because I'm your mother, but I should have known better. You've always been a selfish brat, and I don't know why I expected you to change." With that, she stormed off. I was shaking after that interaction, but it felt so good to put my mother in her place and give her a taste of her own medicine. Of course, her entitlement was shocking, but I should have expected it considering she acted that way all my life. I don't know what happened to her after that, nor did I actively try to find out. My aunt did call to tell me that my mother had gone crying to her as well, but my aunt turned her down. Apparently she also saw a bunch of pictures with me in them around the house and realized that my aunt helped me out, and she threw a big fit about it. Whatever it was, I was glad that in the end I was living the best life I could, surrounded by people who truly love, value, and respect me.